Welcome back, everyone. I am super excited to introduce TJ Asher, who is the President of Acquisitions for Weston, Inc. In this role, he's instrumental in identifying strategically located properties in target markets and port cities, securing financing, and finalizing each project through to its closing and stabilization period. Most recently, he has acquired the company's largest group of properties to date, a 5.5 million square foot industrial portfolio of manufacturing, warehouse, flex space, and industrial properties in South Carolina, known as Carolina Industrial Properties. Let's all give a big welcome to TJ Asher.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. I'll start out by just telling you a little bit about Weston and who we are and what we do. Weston Inc. is a commercial real estate firm that owns and manages its own real estate. We're primarily industrial real estate. That's been our focus since the inception, which was 1972. The firm was started by my father back in 1972 and has grown, and I currently work with my two brothers and my two sisters. We are headquartered here in Cleveland. We have properties in Cleveland, Columbus, Louisville, Kentucky, Nashville, Tennessee, all over North Carolina and all over South Carolina, with a couple of one-off properties in some different markets. We're currently at 22 million square feet of space, and we have about 700 tenants total. So it's been active for us over the last several years with our growth and where we've been headed with the organization. The last 6-8 months have been very crazy for us, for everybody, not just us. It's been a roller coaster, to say the least. It has been very interesting in terms of what it's done for us as an organization. First COVID hits, then the civil unrest hits. Now we got the election, and it's a very polarizing political process here that we're going through. When COVID hit in early in the year, we had to plan immediately for what was happening. Nobody really understood it. Nobody really understood what was happening, but we had to come up with a plan. We had to execute a plan. It was not easy. It took a lot of meetings, got a little contentious, and we ultimately are better for it at the end of the day. I couldn't believe personally the amount of detail that it really takes to plan for this kind of stuff. I mean, the big picture things, like where people sit and staying socially distant. I don't want to say that was the easy part, but the easier part, it was all the small details that had to happen. Who was going to pick up the mail? How were we going to get bills paid? Things like that, because people weren't coming into the office. So getting together and working as a team really helped us through that. Prior to COVID hitting and prior to the civil unrest and whatnot, we had been working very hard on the culture of our company. And it has been getting better and better, and it has we now have a very good culture within the organization, and I think that that's very important, especially when you come up with times like COVID. Everybody was able to jump in. Everybody's able to help. We're Northeast Ohioans at the end of the day. That's what we do, and it really worked. Our culture has really helped us through this. Excuse me. Part of that is through the hiring process. We're very select. We try very hard to find the right people that are going to make the right mix with our organization. It certainly wasn't easy, working from home, learning how to work from home in our business was relatively difficult. Speaking for myself in particular, it was very difficult. I'm not used to working at home or not being around people. In my business and what I do, I'm constantly talking to people, I'm meeting with people, networking, so on. And it was very difficult to do that. Learning how to do that on Teams and on Zooms and just through emails certainly is a different way of doing business, but it's a way that we all have to learn. And it's a way that has been, challenging at times. You lose a little bit of the collaboration, you lose a little bit of the team effect, you lose a little bit of the creativity through in process. I can't walk over to somebody's office and say, what do you think about this paragraph? What do you think about this dilemma that I have? It's through emails and scheduled team meetings. So it's just much different than it used to be. Working from home and figuring out the difficulties of that, people setting up their home offices and whatnot, certainly is very challenging. One thing that's definitely helped us through the process, especially in March and April and May, when the pandemic was really there was a lot of panic, a lot more panic than there is now. It was just that much less understood. Jamie Asher, my brother, who is our CEO, was very good at communicating with everybody via email and updates. And it was very important to be transparent, to be honest about the situation, to be very clear about what we were going through. And I think it helped a lot of the people to understand we didn't necessarily know everything. It wasn't something where there's a handbook and we can follow a process. We had to feel our way through it like everybody else. We had to adapt based on our business and our culture and our way of doing things. People were first. You had to take care of the staff. You had to take care of what their needs were. We had to listen to them. We had to hear what their concerns were, their ideas in terms of how to do things differently. We had to take care of vendors. We had to take care of our tenants. Everybody kind of had a different opinion and a different way of looking at it. We had to kind of bring all that in and sort through it. For us, tenants was a big one. The tenants, some of them were having sincere difficulty, and we had to pay attention to them. We had to be understanding of their business and what their business was. Why were they having trouble paying rent, if they were having trouble paying rent, and really understanding and taking the time to engage with them so that they felt comfortable and we worked it out together. So fortunately for us, it worked. We've had some tenants that have had that have struggled, but for the most part, we have been very fortunate where our tenants have been able to work through the issues, work through it with us, and we're all going to be better partners because of it. At the same time, all this is happening, COVID, the pandemic, and civil unrest, and, fairly chaotic where people really didn't know what was going on. It's been a very exciting time at Weston. We're very fortunate from the standpoint we're in the industrial real estate business. The office world, the residential, the retail world, hospitality. They're getting hit much more hard with the impact of COVID. The residential world seems to be rebounding pretty well right now. Definitely took a hit for a long time, and the occupancies are climbing slightly. People are paying their rents from a residential standpoint. Residentially from in the suburbs is doing very well. They're not getting hit in the suburbs the way urban communities have been, such as downtown Cleveland. But for us, being in industrial real estate, that's been the golden child these days. Wasn't always that way when I was much younger and, getting started in the business, it was very difficult to do industrial real estate. Lenders didn't like industrial, they didn't understand it. The transaction sizes were very small. People wanted big deals, and it just wasn't that way with industrial. Everybody was flocking for office space, retail space, things like that. And it was a lot more difficult. But, the last 15, I don't know how many years, but for quite some time now, industrial has been very strong. People understand the logistics side of the business. Logistics is becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger part of our economy and who we are and what we do. And following those trends is in part what we do. Where's the product coming from? Where's the product going to? And locating ourselves in some strategic areas to be able to capitalize on that. So as far as Weston goes and COVID, and we've been able to continue to do business. We do it in part because of our culture and who we are that I mentioned. We do it in part because we have to survive, right? So we can't let the bumps in the road affect what our objectives are, what our goals and plans are. We still have to execute on the plan. Our plan it has significant growth in it. We have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal for anybody that's read the book Good to Great, and we're striving towards that BHAG. It's always in our minds. It's always at the forefront of what we're doing and how we're doing it. COVID provides a little bump in the road. We have to adapt, and that's what it's really all about. We stay focused even more so than we have been, and we have to work our ways through it. COVID's not going anywhere. It's going to be around for a long time, I would imagine. We're going to learn how to adapt, and we're going to adapt to live with it and figure out how to live with it probably for quite some time. Hopefully it calms down and it's not quite as aggressive as it is right now, but it certainly doesn't appear that it's just going to disappear someday. With the COVID and things, again, we had a very large acquisition in the early spring and in March. We then had a big sale in April. So we have been conducting business as we always have been. It's just a lot more challenging. That's all, and we have to be able to adapt to that. In September, we bought some property in September and October here, and the provisions within the contracts, the provisions with or the negotiations with the sellers or buyers of property. Everybody's in it together, so we understand. We now have a provision that accounts for if the recorder's office is closed. We've had a couple instances where we weren't sure if we were going to be able to record a deed because the recorder's office is having some trouble, not only in Northeast Ohio, but in other communities also. Sometimes it's very hard to get the title research done because, you can't go to the county's offices in whichever community you're in and get the documentation that you need. So it slows the process down. But in our world, everybody's in the same boat. So most people understand and will be accommodating for that as long as you're open and honest and you're planning for it. Our plan as we look forward really is really staying the course and staying the same. We want to execute all of our different strategies, our acquisition strategy, our property and asset management strategy. Each individual department has particular strategies that it has to achieve. The budgeting process has changed a little bit. The way we're going to achieve might change a little bit, but for the most part, we're staying very focused. We continue to look at deals. We are continuing to analyze, do the research, and do all the due diligence of the deals that we look at, and want to continue to do that. The new environment is don't fight it, just adapt to it, figure it out. What are the obstacles? What are the objections? And let's figure out how to achieve exactly what we need to achieve. I would believe that the next 6 months are going to be very similar to the last 6 months. I don't think that there's going to be a big change. Again, with how we're doing business and what we're doing, I would anticipate things to stay relatively the same. And, for the most part, I think the economy is going to stay relatively the same. There's just a lot of unrest out there, and until that kind of settles down, I think we're going to kind of be in the same position. So I do want to address for Weston its outlook of where it's going. We see Northeast Ohio as a very good market for ourselves and what we're doing. But we're also looking south, and we're looking to grow in other states. The Carolinas, if you pay attention to the Carolinas have some population growth, and that's a great place to be. Again, logistics coming out of the ports is a very good place to be from an industrial real estate standpoint, which is who we are and where our focus is, and that's where we're going to be spending, a good significant amount of our time in terms of our growth rate. So I'm a little short on time. Short that my time was supposed to be a little longer than what it is, but I'll open it up to some questions for anybody. Be happy to answer any questions anybody has in terms of where and what Weston's up to.
Thank you so much, TJ. And it's a great story for dealing with adversity. We're all dealing with that. I love how you said just being honest with everybody. I think that's all we can do is tell people the truth and go from there. So let me dive in. I know we had we've got a couple questions here. Mike asks, Weston redeveloped the standard building downtown into apartments. How has COVID affected its occupancy?
It's had a relatively significant impact. When we opened up, it was very optimistic. We had achieved the occupancy that we wanted. We were in the mid-90s. It has dropped. And we've recently seen it coming back. The last month, the activity, the showings, the lease rate, each week, for the last 4 or 5 weeks, each week has seen an increase in activity, both not only in people coming to look, but in people signing leases. So the unrest downtown really had an impact. Probably, I would think the unrest downtown had a bigger impact than actually COVID. The violence that was occurring, people were a little timid about going downtown, about living there, and what those impacts were. We got to get the restaurants open. The restaurants aren't really opened yet. That's a main activity for people living downtown. They want to go to a restaurant and bar and hang out and be social. We're social creatures by nature. And that's a really important part. And that's a very tough puzzle to solve. The restaurants need people in there to open. They can't have enough people in to open, and where that solution is, it is yet to be determined, I think.
I completely agree. We're in some interesting times, especially in the city areas. Dominic says, Weston is a great family business success story. Can you talk about how, as a family, you make it work?
I don't know. It's not easy. We're very fortunate. Number one, we're a close family. So my parents had 5 children. All 5 of us live in and around the area. There's always birthday parties and Christmas and Thanksgivings where we're all together. So we're very fortunate that we do a lot of things together, and we go on family vacations together. We just have a lot of interaction with one another. So that's a very important part of that dynamic. Another important part is, you know, for my father, who started the business, engaged us all very early in the business and encouraged us all the time to work together and not let the business get in the way, and to, keep to keep the family as a part of the business and not something totally separate. So, we have family meetings on a regular basis. We bring in the kids, the grandkids. We try to teach them what the business is, to see if there's any interest on their part. And we're constantly working on that. I can remember a number of years ago, we had a consultant who was like, "Why are you doing this now? You guys are so young, and what are you worrying about all this stuff for?" And, at the time I was like, "Yeah, you're right. Why do I even care about succession, or why do I care about, working with my brother? I'm just getting my stuff done." And it's helped, and to the persistence of my father, who really kind of pushed it all along. You work on it for a while, and then you go do your day job, and then sometimes you're working on, the family side of things, and then you go do your day job. So it's been very fun. It's been interesting. There are moments, for sure, where within a family organization, you're working with your brothers and sisters, you want to strangle somebody. That's life. But because I think we're a close family first, that stuff works itself out at the end of the day.
And I love that your dad started you at a young age, because you really didn't know any differently. That was part of just staying with the family business. Okay, Dave asks, did you see someone?
I'm sorry, worked in the business, at a very early age. So we had multiple positions and roles within the organization as we grew. And that helped out tremendously also.
Yeah, I imagine. Okay, Dave said, do you see somewhat of an exit from traditional commercial space tenants into residential multifamily due to COVID?
Say that one more time, please.
Do you see somewhat of an exit from traditional commercial space tenants into residential multifamily due to COVID?
If I understand it right, I don't think so. The commercial tenants, especially I'm not sure I understand the question, but the commercial tenants are getting hit by COVID. The hope is, most residential units, buildings have the commercial tenants on the first floor. There's retail, there's restaurants or whatnot on the first floor. And I would imagine most of those people are, waiting for the COVID to stop, or waiting for businesses to be able to reopen. So there's the short-term impact, but I believe, downtown will get back to people on the streets and opening up the commercial side of the business. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. And you talked about this a little bit, but Pete asks, can you speak to the power of relationships in your business? Obviously, you talked about the family side, but your business overall.
Very important, both with vendors and tenants. With all the relationships, all your networking relationships are extremely important. Like I mentioned before, being able to communicate with your tenants and work with your tenants. I mean, prior to COVID, we would, have ice cream socials for the tenants, do various little things for the tenants, just engage them in any way we can. Part of our BHAG, maybe I should mention it, is BLT, which is best landlord in town. It's 50/90 BLT. We want 50 million square feet of space, 90% occupied, and to be the best landlord in town. That's all part of that. So, you need to have those relationships, communicate with them. How's your business doing? Our transaction people, our property management people, everybody is engaged with our tenants, so that we understand their business as best as possible. We want to be in front of them if they need to expand, if they need to contract, if they need another city. In any way we can help them, whether or not we're the landlord or not, we want to try to be able to help the tenant. Maybe it's just networking and trying to find them an advisor, or trying to find them a vendor, or something similar to that. And also relationships with vendors. I mean, we have some tremendous vendors. I mean, these guys go above and beyond, whether it's the electrician, whether it's the concrete, or whatever the trade is. So many of these people will go above and beyond. Now, again, we try to do nice things for the vendors. One, you got to pay them promptly, and those kinds of things. Two is, let's be clear about what the work is, everybody's expectations. Construction can get a little crazy sometimes. So it's a communication. You just have to be in front of them, communicate. What's the problem? Is there a problem? So those relationships are very valuable to us. We've taken an approach where in a lot of the trades, we use a couple, 3 different people. And it's not always the lowest price. It's oftentimes the lowest price, but it's about the relationship, and it's about, can you perform on time? A lot of our for tenant improvement work, a lot of our leases require it to be done by a certain time, and we look good if we get the tenant in time. And that's a very important component. Now, it has to be on time and on budget, and that's what we work for, and that's what those relationships are able to help us achieve.
Yeah, I love that. So important in business. And we have one final question in our last few minutes. Has financing from banks changed recently?
Yes, and it's still changing. It used to be pretty understandable. You used to kind of know where the banks were going to be coming from. Right now, interest rates are great. They're very low right now. We would anticipate that they're going to stay low for a while, another year or so anyway. My crystal ball isn't any better than anybody else's, so I don't know. But where the terms are what it's changing within the lending industry for us. One, it's a lower loan to value, which is very common anymore. They keep lowering the loan to value, and that's a big one. So now you're coming up with more equity, and the larger the transaction, the more difficult that becomes. And then just all the other little terms, where they might have reserves in the loan. They might have various provisions, like if a tenant doesn't renew by a certain day, you have to put so much money in or something. There's a whole bunch of little terms that you really got to watch for that really weren't there prior to COVID. They weren't quite as prolific within the documents that you have, and now it's just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. But we'll work through it. I mean, they're all very workable. Nothing is too far out of the realm of the ability to get it done. Nobody's asking for something that can't get done, at least not yet anyway.
Good. Well, thank you, TJ, so much for your time. It was a great presentation.